Flosstube, this is Gem Stitch here for a different sort of setup of video. Normally I like to do monthly videos in which I show you my progress and what my plans are for the future, but I'm not going to do that because I've left it quite a long time. So I think the best thing to do is just do little snapshots of videos so that hopefully there's not a huge long video in which I have to try and go through everything, and I'm sure I'm going to forget some things, but I feel that this is probably the best way for me to approach it. So I'm not sure what this video is going to be called yet. Maybe autumn finishes, not necessarily autumn themed, just the time that I've had to fully finish some projects, even though they may have been finished quite a long time before, and things that I have actually finished, maybe not fully finished, within this time frame. So it's difficult for me to know what to put in one video and what to put in another, because you don't want to be repeating yourself, especially if you are going to watch me sort of one after the other as I upload. But my stitching time has been drastically reduced. I'm working full-time, plus we obviously moved in the beginning of the year in spring, and the house needs a lot of work, and you're in that situation of a bit of a catch-22 where you don't have a lot of free time, and the time that you do have, you know, you want to be doing up the house so that you can sit back and think, oh, it's sort of getting there and it's getting done, but that means no stitching time. So there's this weird sort of, you know, I need stitching to get through, but equally I don't want to sit in a house that looks unfinished. So yeah, there's these, and obviously time, money, that sort of thing. So there's all these sort of things going on, as well as the normal family stuff. So yeah, it's been a learning experience, and I'm still not 100% finding my footing as such. But I do feel that stitching has really helped. I did go on the Milton Keynes retreat, which I'm going to do a separate video for, which includes my secret stitcher, which I participated in, and also what I received from a secret stitcher, which was fabulous. Any things that I've bought there I'm going to show in a completely separate video, and I've also got a small amount, not a large amount, but a small amount of footage of some of the stuff that stitchers had brought at Milton Keynes retreat to show some of their stitching, which is fabulous. So I'm going to do that in a completely separate video, otherwise this could end up being quite long. And because I've changed my rotation and the way I stitch because of things that are happening, it's changed the way obviously I can really do videos, because I'm not sort of sticking to my normal format. So I'm just going to treat this video, and the plan is to show you all the things that I've either finished or fully finished, and talk a little bit about them, and obviously some of the autumn projects that I've had on display as well, a limited amount because of mess and dust and things. So yeah, so let's get started straight away. So the first thing, let's talk about one of the projects that you may have seen me finish in my last video. So that was Silver Creek Samplers Dorothy's Discovery. Now I've chosen to stitch this into a cushion size, like a large chair cushion size, and the way I'm doing that, and I'm intending to do that on a couple of projects, as you'll see, is I stitch them on 25 count, and I stitch them 3/2. The 3 gives me, you could possibly stitch them 2/2. The 3 gives me the coverage. Bearing in mind it's a chair cushion, I almost want it to have a slightly tapestry feel, more bulky. So I've chosen to stitch it 3/2, but I do think if you particularly like primitive style but you wanted to make it a lot larger, you could probably stitch 2/2, and that would be okay and work with that sort of primitive-y look as well. So this was the pattern. I think in my last video I completed it, I just hadn't fully finished it. So this is my fully finish, and some of these have got tags on because I took them to retreat to show. So this is what she looks like. So I've not put, this isn't a cushion cover, this is actually a cushion. So yes, I may at some point need to restuff it a couple of years down the line. I'm okay with that. I'll just unpick it and then fluff it, take the stuffing out and maybe restuff it. These, to be honest, although they're actually living in my conservatory, I'm really the only person that comes in here, and to be honest, I think I don't sit on them, and not many people do. I kind of move them to the back of the sofa, like I can just put them here. So people don't really lean on them. I no longer have any pets or anything, so I don't have to worry about those concerns in regards to people laying all over them. That being said, I do try, because obviously there's more chance of them being sat on. I have converted all of the colours to DMC so that they're colour fast. There is still petite treasure braid in here, so I would be a little bit about washing it, but hand washing it. But when that time comes, I will deal with it. Until then, I'm happy with this finish. So I've used the blue gingham to kind of match her dress, and I've used a little bit of embroidery anglais ribbon here to sort of give you the line of the petticoat. And I've actually backed it on with green cotton, bottle green cotton velvet. I don't know if it looks really glary, sorry. Bottle green cotton velvet, and then with a nice bright red cording, which I just couched on. So that's my Dorothy's Discovery cushion. That's a fully finished, and that's living in my conservatory permanently at the moment. So it's not really seasonal, is it? You could have it out any time. So I suppose colour wise it could lend itself a bit more to summer, but yeah, so I was really pleased with that. So that's Dorothy's Discovery. Then moving on sort of more to the time of year and seasonal, which tends to be a lot of what I'm stitching at the moment as well. Because my rotation had to go out the window, it was what I could pick up, what I could work on, what was easy for me to not have to sit and have a big frame, like use my Lowry or anything, because my workroom can look a mess. So I've been mainly working in Q-snaps because I can sit anywhere in the bed. Don't do that often, to be fair. Once I think I've done that, but I could do that, and or the dining room, and I can move them around a lot quicker. So that's generally the principle. So the next thing that I've stitched and fully finished was a sow, a stitch along with Priscilla and Chelsea, and it's the Little House Needleworks Pumpkin Hollow Farm. It's really cute. Now it says on the bottom pumpkin, obviously it says here pumpkin hollow, and it says pick your own pumpkins with the flowers. I wasn't that fussed about this flowery bit, so I always intended to stitch it there, and I always intended to do it on a 25 count to make it more of a cushion to have on a sofa rather than a smaller pillow cushion. So I finished that, and this is what I've come up with. So I made the house a little bit darker in the colour conversions as well, and the flossed conversions. I've made the house a bit darker. Also the fabric that I used, the 25 count, this is light taupe. I think it actually recommends light Mocha, which is actually a lighter colour than the taupe. So, but yeah, so this is out obviously at the moment seasonally, because I'll have this out until the end of November, as there are still leaves on the trees, although they've all turned a lovely yellowy gold colour and orange. So yeah, this is out at the moment, and I've backed that with some brown gingham. So these little tags, it's just because I took some of my finishes to the retreat, and it's just easier. I wrote the details down that I thought people might be interested in, rather than, not that I mind speaking to people, but just so that they could have the information there and then. So yeah, so this is my pumpkin hollow farm, and it's finished. And again, it's a permanent cushion. if and when the time comes that it needs to be restuffed, then that is what I will do. But otherwise, I'm quite happy as it is. So continuing on the fall autumn theme, this was one that I actually finished last year, and I believe, I finished it last year. I think I fully finished it last year as well, which was the Ghoul Tidings by Plum Street Samplers, and I finished this, as you can tell, because I always change when they play around with the dates, but I always make the last two the actual year, and then I know when I actually stitched it. So obviously this was out because of Halloween, and it's just got some sort of primitive, just plain brown fabric on the back. And then this one, I know I fully finished this recently. This is a Nikki's creation, and it's called the Petite Halloween Sampler. Both the Ghoul Tidings and the Petite Halloween Sampler are on the DVD of Just Cross Stitch Halloween. So this was one of my Stitch Mania starts. And I really like this trim. It's basically, I picked it up in a job lot, and this trim actually looks like dreadlocks, really. And I've got them in quite a few. I should have brought them down, different colours, but it's quite nice. So this, what it does is, because it's like dreadlocks, it creates this fat and thin as you're couching it on, but I actually quite like it, the fact that it's not perfect. And obviously backed it on a nice orange fabric. So this is one of the ones that I've got, one of the smalls that I've got out at the moment. And this one I think I finished last year as well, using some of that same sort of different colour, but that dreadlocky fringe. I'll have to find out what that's called. And this is by Cherish Stitches, The Witch is In. And this was on a piece of Crafty Kitten Jurassic Sands, and it's an opalescent. But this has been out since I did my fireplace, because actually at the moment I feel this is very appropriate all year round for me. So I'm not 100% sure that's ever going to go away. So that's The Witch is In. Oh, and I used, I will put the information in the information box below, but the thread that I used for this, I'm sure is called like wine cork or something like that. And it was from a independent dyer on Etsy called Heart Stitch Design or something. I will put the information down below. She also does fabric as well, although I haven't actually purchased any of her fabric yet. But yeah, she's done a couple of sort of threads, and this was one of them. So that's that. So there's some of the designs that I've had out on the table, or wherever I've put them, somewhere on the fireplace. Like I said, obviously I don't want to put too much out because of the work that's going on in the house and the potential that it could get damaged, and that's not even something I really want to consider so it's just like little bits here and there while I just sort of find my place, and that's the thing, it's things change, you move furniture around, and once you sort of settled and 100% happy of where things will go, then it's easier to envisage what you want for that space. So another thing that I finished, or I fully finished for the retreat, was my design, which was Oranges and Lemons. So this is the one that's the poem Oranges and Lemons, and it's got all the sort of added charms on it that represent different parts of the bells of London. What I will do is that I have turned this into a pattern. Obviously this is my design, but because of work, because of moving, and because of obviously a lot of life stuff, I know that I literally do not have the time to commit to really, you know, selling this and coming across. So it's done, it's saved, and at the end of the day, when circumstances change, then I will re-look at making it available. But it does take a lot of time, because considering I'll be starting from scratch, you know, with shops and things and that sort of stuff, like Etsy or Folksy, or Where Do I Go, and I just don't have the time to dedicate to work that out, and I don't want to do, and that's the same thing. By rushing it out, you can't provide a good customer service because you're not 100% sure how you're dealing with things, and I just don't want that on my. It's just too much extra at the moment, but it does exist and it is sort of finished. And the way I finished this is I actually used an old leather school bag or leatherette school bag, it's not real leather, that was falling apart, but I really loved this bag and I was reluctant to give it up, thinking that I would patch it up, which would just look stupid, but you know. And then I ordered some leatherette because I knew this was the sort of look, this patchy sort of look that I wanted, and it wasn't the right colour. And I said, I was saying to my husband, what I want is this colour. And he said, well, the bag's broken, cut it up. I was like, but I did, and I'm kind of pleased I did, because you know, this is going to be out in our house for a long time, and the bag lives on, just in a different form. So, and then here's the backing, and eventually I'll be putting this on a pole rod type thing, so just a plain backing that was suitable. But yeah, so this is oranges and lemons. But like I said, I'll do a separate video as and when the time comes, where I'll talk you through my choices of beads and buttons and why they're there and what they represent nearer that time. So yeah, also talking of poems with oranges and lemons, it is the 5th of November today, so if you're in the UK it'll be Guy Fawkes night, so obviously first things first, stay safe with your fireworks and things. There was a lot of bonfire nights and things going on on Saturday, which was the 3rd of November. I was out celebrating my dad's 60th in London, which was a fabulous evening, so happy birthday, Dad. And yeah, so I don't know my brain. Gone. It couldn't have been that important, could it? It's just gone. Let's just, what I need to do is just stick to the program, okay? So lastly, I think for this segment, didn't even manage to get through that, to be fair, will be, I did finish what I was working on a sampler Sunday. My sampler Sundays, in principle, have kind of gone out the window, but they haven't in theory of, I want to try and work my way through the Antique and Needlework quarterly DVDs. That hasn't gone away, and I do want to do that, and I've continued on to something else. But because of my altered stitching pattern, sampler Sundays is just not realistic, because sometimes that is the only time I get to stitch, which means I'd never stitch on anything else. Not necessarily saying that's a problem, I'm just saying I've had to change it around. So, but I did manage to get this finished. So this is the Susanna Hardiman 1847 sampler. I did change out some of the colours. I've yet to sign it. I will do that in a colour that's very similar to this fabric, so that it's almost invisible. But I do think it's important for me to mark that I've stitched this. You could see it's not a replica anyway. You can see it's a replica and not an original, but I just think just in case, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to do it in a very, very light, almost invisible, but if you were looking at it and scrutinising it, you'd be able to see it. So this needs to be framed, and I believe I actually have the perfect frame for it as well, which will actually fit perfectly. It's just a case of getting it done. So all the information on any threads or anything I will put in the information box below. In regards to the cushions, they're stitched on 25 count and they're stitched 3/2, and in a lot of the cases with the cushions, in regards to these ones and the Dorothy, I use blended threads as well. So 3/2, there may be 2 different threads. A term is tweeding, blended. I blend the threads, but I will put all that information down below. In regards to this, that's what I did here. I blended, actually, you know, clutch the pearls moment. I blended hand dyed threads as well as DMCs. So to create the look, and I mean the variegation still comes through in some cases, you can see there with the copper, because sometimes the colour's too strong on the hand dyed, or there's too much of a contrast, and that's not the effect that I'm going for. So the DMC, by picking a palette, will actually sort of mute it down, I'll give it a continual effect. Equally as well, it's also cost effective, because, you know, moving and spending out on stuff in the home, but it is also cost effective because the threads go a lot further, and in the case of this, I actually left off a big border. Now, as it was, there is some cases where I've had to buy 3 of the same, I think there's at least 3 or 4 different thread colours that I've had to buy 3 or 4 different hand dyes for. So actually this is quite an expensive piece. I mean, this was stitched on 32, and obviously if you stitched it on a smaller count and you stitched over with one thread, that would certainly reduce the cost in that sense. But I like the 32. 32 is sort of my go-to. I don't mind stitching on 36, and I stitch on 40. So I very rarely stitch on 28, although I will do if it is easier to do a conversion over, then I'll do that. But yeah, so this is on 32 count, Belfast linen. It is a hand dye. It's very, I think if you look at my other videos, you might be able to tell, it's a very, very light, it's called slightly buttery, so it's got a yellowy cream colour to it. And let's see if I can. So, and the house has a lot of satin stitches, which for some reason I have massive issues with satin stitches, and to be honest, they're the first sort of embroidery stitches that people kind of learn, and yet I find them really difficult. So yes, the house is mainly made up of all satin stitches, a few bits in the middle that's cross stitch. But yeah, so that's finished, and I'm pleased it's finished, and as soon as that's framed, it will have nowhere to go because I need to sort out my craft room. But that's what I've been up to. So that's some of the things I've had on show, and some of the things that I've finished recently in this sort of 2.5 month time span since I've last spoke to you. So thank you very, very much for watching. Hi if you're new to me. Just thank you for, I have been trying to catch up with Flosstube and things. Time is a real issue for me at the moment. So, but I'm grateful for all the likes, all the support, even though sometimes I'm not always capable of showing it at the moment because of restrictions. Do know that I'm just grateful for all the nice kind things that you've been support and kind things that you say. It really does make a difference, and it means a lot, and I do miss doing these videos. So I hope you've enjoyed some of my finishes and what I've been getting up to. If you've got any questions, then do please ask. I will endeavour to get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And yeah, just thanks very much, and I will see you very shortly in my next update. But thanks guys, take care, happy stitching.